He cut off my finger for his best friend, then made me her bridesmaid. On the day his best friend, Luna, was getting married, my husband Blake showed up with his groomsmen and crashed the wedding. He dropped to one knee in front of everyone's shocked faces, his voice dripping with emotion. "Luna, I promise I'll give you all the happiness in the world." Blake's friends dragged me back to the dressing room and forced me into a bridesmaid dress. "This is all happening so fast, we couldn't find a bridesmaid in time. Just do us this favor." When I emerged, I watched as my own husband kissed another woman at the altar as her bridesmaid. After the ceremony, Blake looked at my disheveled appearance and frowned. "This is just a marriage of convenience with Luna. Nothing will really happen between us. Once her family situation stabilizes, I'll throw you an even bigger wedding." I smiled through my tears. "A wedding? I don't need one anymore." Part 1. The guests whispered among themselves as the ceremony descended into chaos. "I've only seen wedding crashing in movies. This is insane. But wait, isn't Blake married already?" "No way, you must be mistaken." Hearing these words, my eyes burned with unshed tears. When Blake and I got married, we didn't have a wedding. He said he hated all the pomp and circumstance, wanted to keep things simple. So we just got our marriage license and had dinner with both families. Back then, I didn't think anything was wrong with that. But today, at Luna's wedding, Blake stood there holding a bouquet of red roses, proposing to his best friend with all the romance he'd never shown me. His eyes were full of tenderness and endless devotion. Completely different from the business-like attitude when we'd gotten our marriage certificate. Blake approached me then, gripping my hand urgently. I still hoped for an explanation, even a pathetic excuse would do. But his next words chilled me to the bone. "Violet, Luna says she loves hearing you play violin. I want to give her the perfect wedding. Please help me, will you?" I took a deep breath, forcing down the pain in my chest, and looked him in the eye. "Blake, do you have a heart? I'm your wife, not some performing monkey you can summon at will." His face darkened instantly, frowning with displeasure. "Violet, can you stop being so unreasonable? This is not the time. Do you want all these people to laugh at Luna?" His tone suddenly softened. "Vi, I promise this is the last time, okay? I swear I'll never see Luna again after this. Just help me one more time, please." I coldly shook off his hand and turned to leave. But then Luna's voice rang out from the stage. "Would everyone like to hear our violinist play us a song?" Luna stood on stage with a sweet smile. The crowd erupted in approval. "Oh wow, it's Violet Chen, I haven't heard her play in so long. Don't be modest, violinist, go on up." The next second, a violin was shoved into my arms as Blake pushed me onto the stage. I stood in the corner holding the instrument. As the accompaniment began, Blake and Luna danced in the center of the stage. Beautiful couple, graceful movements, so perfectly matched. As for me, just an insignificant backdrop. When the music ended to thunderous applause, I quietly left the stage with my violin. Blake and Luna immediately followed. "Vi, are you angry?" Luna placed her hand on Blake's shoulder, her red lips parting. "Vi, you know what Blake and I are. No need to be jealous, right?" Those words pierced my heart like thorns. Blake and I had been together 5 years, with Luna as his best friend by our side the entire time. She always used their friendship as an excuse for their intimate behavior, arms around shoulders, ambiguous gestures. While I stood by like an outsider, watching it all. Every time I showed the slightest displeasure, Luna would look at me with innocent eyes. "Vi, we're just friends. Why are you being so petty?" And Blake always took Luna's side, telling me to be more understanding, that it was just normal behavior between friends. If I showed any unhappiness, I was being small-minded and unreasonable. I pressed my lips together, taking a deep breath before looking at Blake. "I'm not angry. You two continue. I'm leaving." Part 2. Just as I was about to leave, Luna grabbed my arm. "Vi, can you help me with one last thing?" She pulled out divorce papers from her purse and handed them to me. "Vi, please divorce Blake temporarily, okay? Only after Blake and I get our marriage certificate will my parents stop forcing me to marry someone else." I froze, staring at her in shock. "You want me to divorce Blake?" Before I could finish, Luna draped her arm over Blake's shoulder again. "Blake, tell her. Yourself, will you help your buddy or not?" Blake frowned slightly, looking at me with hesitation in his eyes. Fine, forget it if you won't help. You ungrateful friend, you just want to see me married off to those men, don't you?" Hearing Luna's words, I instinctively looked at Blake, only to see his previously hesitant expression harden with determination. "Vi, let's just help her this once." With that, he swiftly signed his name on the divorce papers and pressed his thumbprint. Looking at those divorce papers, I felt dazed. I'd lost count of how many times this had happened. Leaving my parents' anniversary dinner because Luna sprained her ankle playing basketball. Dropping out of important video conferences because Luna got into a fight and hurt her arm. Every time, he had an excuse. This time, to reassure Luna's parents, he was even willing to divorce me temporarily. A bitter smile tugged at my lips, my eyes stinging with tears. Blake and I were high school classmates. He was the untouchable golden boy, the brightest star in any crowd. I was the invisible nobody. After graduation, I thought we'd never meet again. But he knelt before me with a ring. "Violet Chen, marry me. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for all the time we lost." I said yes. Even when my parents threatened to disown me, I kicked off my heels and ran to him barefoot. And now, here we were. I asked with trembling lips. What if I don't sign? Blake irritably loosened his tie, his eyes cold. Violet, don't push it. I told you it's temporary, and Luna is just my friend. Friend? He talked about his friend every day. He remembered she loved mangoes but forgot I was allergic to them. He remembered she loved sweet and sour pork but forgot I never ate sweets. He took care of his friend in every way but forgot I was the one on his marriage certificate. Seeing my silence, Blake softened his tone. Be good. I'm just helping Luna. Once things settle down for her, we'll remarry. Just then, a group of men burst in. The leader pointed at Blake menacingly. So you're the one who crashed the wedding? Get the bride back here now. Before the words finished, they lunged at Blake and Luna. Part 3. Luna screamed in terror, instinctively hiding in Blake's arms. Blake held her protectively, kicking hard at the attackers. Watching them cling together, bitterness filled my heart. Though Blake was a good fighter, he was outnumbered and soon overwhelmed. Why are you taking her? Blake shouted while shielding Luna, as if claiming his territory. Luna Mitchell is mine. The men laughed coldly. One sneered. If I remember correctly, Blake Morrison, you're already married. What, looking to commit bigamy? Luna stared at me in shock. Vi, if you don't want the divorce I won't force you, but why did you call these people? Do you really want them to take me away? At her words, Blake's face turned thunderous. He glared at me viciously. Violet, did you call these people? Do you want Luna dead? What has she ever done to you? His shouting left me stunned. I hurried to explain. It wasn't me. I don't know these people, how could I call them? I explained desperately, but Blake still didn't. Believe me. He decided I was the villain who'd called these men, the evil woman trying to destroy Luna. After security subdued the troublemakers, Blake turned his fury on me. I only wanted a temporary divorce, but now I want you to apologize to Luna. We'll only remarry when you've made her happy. Without giving me a chance to speak, he grabbed my hand and forced me to sign the divorce papers. When it came to the thumbprint, I hesitated. My hand hovered in midair, clutching the ink pad, frozen. Seeing my reluctance, Luna fanned the flames. Vi, my foolish boy has this temper, don't take it personally. I'll talk to him later. Just do me this favor and sign now. Making Blake look bad in front of all these people, how can he save face? Blake ignored Luna, his bloodshot eyes boring into me. Violet, I'm giving you one last chance. Will you do it? I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. Seeing I still wouldn't budge, Blake exploded. He grabbed a knife from someone nearby and swung it at my hand. Part 4. Ah. The pain was excruciating. My vision went black as my body convulsed. Blood sprayed everywhere, soaking my hands and dress. The agony turned my face deathly pale, my body trembling uncontrollably. But Blake acted like nothing had happened. He wiped the blood from his hands with a tissue, then pressed my severed thumb into the ink pad. Finally, he stamped it hard on the divorce papers. He smirked, looking down at me from above. You thought refusing to stamp would stop me? Violet, don't forget I make the rules here. In that moment, I finally saw his true face. The Blake I once knew was gone. Replaced by a demon who'd do anything for Luna Mitchell. Blake, are you insane? Do you know what you're doing? Do you know how important these hands are to Vi? You cut off her finger, how will she ever play again? Luna shrieked, but excitement gleamed in her eyes. I knew she was deliberately provoking me, wanting me to suffer more. I looked up shakily, eyes full of hatred as I stared at Blake. Blake ignored me completely. Leaving with Luna instead. The divorce is final. Next month we can get married. Tell your parents not to worry. The door slammed shut, leaving me alone in the wedding venue. The blood-soaked white bridesmaid dress was garish against the floor. My severed finger throbbed with pain that made my whole body spasm. Before losing consciousness, I reached out slowly toward my severed finger. It hurt so much. In my haze, I felt someone approaching. I tried to open my eyes to see who it was, but I didn't even have the strength for that. He crouched beside me, gently touching my face, his voice low and hoarse. Was it worth destroying yourself for a man like that? I wanted to answer no, it wasn't worth it, but though my lips moved, no words came. My eyelids grew heavier as darkness swallowed me. He sighed, gathering me carefully in his arms. Vi, let me take you away from here, okay? His voice had a hypnotic quality I couldn't resist. I nodded unconsciously. Then I slipped into complete unconsciousness. Part 5. I woke up in a hospital bed. Moving carefully, I looked at my hand. The severed finger had been reattached, wrapped in thick bandages, throbbing with dull pain. Someone sat by the bed. I turned my head with effort. It was Adrian Hayes. He was my senior from music school, our orchestra's lead violinist. You're awake. I forced a smile. My hand. Adrian was silent for a moment, choosing his words carefully. They reattached the finger, but it won't be like before. His voice was heavy. The doctor said you probably won't be able to. He stopped, unable to continue. But I understood. My violin career, everything I'd poured my heart and dreams into, was over. Tears came again. I clenched my teeth to keep from sobbing. It's okay, Adrian. I smiled with forced lightness. Maybe this is fate giving me a chance to try something new. Adrian looked at me with complicated eyes. He knew I was just comforting myself. He patted my shoulder gently. It's okay, Vi. I'll find the best doctors for follow-up exams. There might still be hope for recovery. Adrian handled my discharge paperwork. I bought a ticket to Seattle, ready to start fresh. Adrian had told me Seattle had the country's best hand specialists who might help. Though I knew the chances were slim, I didn't want to give up. I wanted to fight for myself, even if it was just a sliver of hope. During this time, aside from necessary treatments, I embraced a quieter life. I'd always loved the peaceful, simple life, but Blake hadn't. He preferred the big city for his work, his future. I'd compromised. And look where that got me. In a small town outside Seattle, I bought a tiny house 650 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and a small yard as my sanctuary. A local lady, knowing I lived alone, gave me her golden retriever puppy. When he arrived, he was tiny and golden and adorable. I loved him immediately. I named him Butterscotch. When I felt up to it, I'd take Butterscotch for walks by the lake. During this time, I felt incredibly free and relaxed, almost forgetting I was recovering from trauma. Adrian visited when he could. We'd sit by the lake watching sunsets, talking about the future. Have you really let go? Adrian asked. I looked up at him and smiled. What else can I do? This time had given me clarity. Life is short, just a few decades. No need to live for others. With the time I had left, I wanted to live for myself. Part 6. Despite actively cooperating with doctors and working hard at rehabilitation, my fingers' flexibility couldn't return to what it was. Once, my fingertips could create the most moving melodies on strings. Now, I struggled with even the simplest notes. These treatments were torture. The electrical stimulation's sharp pain, acupuncture's numbness, the tearing agony of physical therapy, all unbearable. I began to doubt if I could ever return to the stage. Looking at Adrian, I spoke with difficulty. I want to give up. Saying those words felt like cutting out my heart. He froze, looking at me in silence for a long while, but said nothing. To comfort him, I forced myself to laugh, trying to sound casual. Actually, I have other things I want to do. Besides violin. I wanted to lighten the heavy atmosphere, but as I spoke, I couldn't control my emotions anymore, laughing through my tears. I didn't want to. I wanted nothing else. I just wanted to play. But I had no choice. I could only hide at home, listening to my former colleagues shine on stage. Each time, I'd break down crying. I didn't know what to do. Until one day, I found a novel. The protagonist, like me, had a disabled left hand but refused to give up, insisting on playing with her right hand. At first, she sounded terrible. Everyone mocked her. But she persisted, practicing daily. Gradually, she improved, even winning major music competitions. Seeing her story, I saw hope. I could do it too, couldn't I? From that day, I began practicing with my right hand on the strings, left hand bowing, slowly working through basic fingering, scales, and arpeggios. I locked myself in for a whole week. Finally, on a sunny morning, I played a complete piece. Part 7. Adrian and I started a 2-person violin ensemble. That's how our musical journey began. Though no one listened at first, we enjoyed it and didn't mind. Later, we grew more popular, and tourists came specifically to our town. Looking at Adrian's face, I suddenly lost focus. I thought of Blake. When I used to practice, Blake would frown and complain. "Violet, do you know how loud you are? You're disturbing my sleep." He'd ask what money I could make from all these competitions. Couldn't I just stay home quietly? When he said these things, his eyes were full of disdain. As if my musical dreams were worthless to him. Even now, I'm grateful I didn't listen to him. Though exhausting, seeing the packed audiences made it all worthwhile. Adrian and I traveled to wine country, to the Pacific Northwest. We experienced different local customs and met many like-minded friends. Sometimes I wonder if I were still with Blake, what would I be doing? Standing in the heat bringing him lunch, secretly jealous that he gave it to Luna? Or interrogating him like a madwoman when he ignored me again to bring Luna coffee? Thinking of this, I smiled again. It didn't matter anymore. Because I had Adrian and supportive fans. That was enough. Violet Chen. Violet Chen. The audience's cheers pulled me back. I bowed deeply to them. But I never expected to see Blake Morrison in the crowd. Part 8. After safely getting Luna home, I returned to the venue to find Violet. The doors were still closed, the space empty except for a pool of blood. Violet was gone. My heart felt crushed, unable to breathe. This wasn't a dream. Violet had really disappeared. But why would she vanish? She should have waited obediently for me to return, then said pitifully. "Blake, I'm really upset. Come comfort me, please." I felt I'd gone too far this time. Would Violet never forgive me? But immediately I dismissed that thought. No, impossible. Violet loved me so much, she wouldn't ignore me. She must be hiding somewhere angry. I tried to comfort myself, but the fear and anxiety only grew stronger. I suddenly remembered Violet once mentioned wanting to travel abroad, to see the world and relax. Yes, I could book tickets. When Violet returned, I'd take her traveling. If I made her happy, she'd definitely forgive me. With this thought, I immediately searched for flights and booked 2 tickets. But I waited at home for so long. And she never came back. Not until Luna reminded me it was time to get our marriage certificate did I realize a month had passed since Violet disappeared. I frantically called and texted her, but got no response. Until that day, scrolling through videos out of boredom, I spotted Violet in a recommended live stream. She wore heavy makeup, red lips striking, completely different from her usual understated look, but I recognized her instantly. Seeing her location, I rushed over without even changing clothes. She was performing by a lake. When I arrived, Violet had just finished playing. A young man stood beside her. They were talking about something, and Violet laughed genuinely happy. I froze. In my memory, Violet was always quiet and gentle. I never knew she could smile so brightly. I called out with trembling voice. Violet. But she just glanced at me coldly, then slowly turned away, as if I were a complete stranger. How could this be? Violet loved me so much. How could she look at me like that? Part 9. I hadn't expected to see Blake again. He'd lost a lot of weight, his eyes full of exhaustion. When our eyes met, I paused, then returned to calm. I thought seeing him again would hurt, that I'd want to ask why he treated me that way. But I felt surprisingly peaceful, like looking at a stranger. After finishing the last piece, I stood to leave. Just outside backstage, Blake was waiting. He looked like he'd been there a while, smelling faintly of cigarettes. I stopped, looking at him expressionlessly. Vi, I bought tickets. Didn't you always want us to travel together? I've cleared my whole schedule to go with you, okay? Blake's voice shook, his eyes pleading. I remembered mentioning wanting to see the northern lights in Iceland together. But back then, he always used work as an excuse, even standing me up repeatedly for Luna's issues. Now, it meant nothing. I looked at him blankly, not wanting to speak. But he grabbed my arm frantically, not letting me leave. Vi, I didn't marry Luna. I'll never deal with her affairs again. Vi, I really know I was wrong. Please forgive me. Vi, I can't eat or sleep. I miss you so much. Without you, I feel like I'm dying. Vi, say something, please. Don't ignore me. He was so loud. My head throbbed, feeling nauseous. I said coldly. Why do you assume I'd wait around to recycle trash like you? He looked up sharply, eyes red, but couldn't speak. Part 10. After that, Blake followed me everywhere. When I returned to town, he'd sit on the stone bench outside my door. Waiting. Sometimes all night. The townspeople were warm and simple, but Blake's cold demeanor kept them from asking what he wanted. The lady who gave me butterscotch asked. Vi, is that man looking for you? I've seen him at your door for days. I smiled faintly. Just my ex-husband. Ex-husband? Must have done something unforgivable. Let me chase him away for you. Before I could respond, Mrs. Liu grabbed a broom and ran out. Through the window, I could hear her loud voice. Shoo, fly. So annoying. Watching Blake being chased away pathetically. I laughed coldly. Did he still think we could reconcile? My lips curved in a cold smile. Since we're divorced, let's go our separate ways happily. But clearly, Blake didn't think so. The next morning, I opened my door to find him there. The early morning after rain carried a chill. Blake wore only a thin shirt, lips pale from cold. Seeing me, his eyes lit up as he offered me breakfast. Vi, I remember you like vegetable dumplings. I bought some for you. Please eat something. Perhaps from staying up all night. His voice was hoarse, with careful pleading. Looking at him, I suddenly laughed. Thanks, but I don't like those. Luna was the one who liked vegetable dumplings. But he didn't remember. More accurately, he'd never cared. With that, I turned to leave. Blake grabbed my wrist, eyes red. Vi, let me explain, please. Believe me, I really didn't marry Luna. I shook off his hand in disgust. Don't touch me. Just then, a cool figure approached. Adrian. He raised an eyebrow, half smiling. Blake. Morrison, don't you understand English? She said don't touch her. He draped his jacket over me, frowning. It's freezing and you're wearing so little. What if you catch cold? I blinked and played along, collapsing weakly into his arms. Adrian, I'm so cold. Adrian held me close, coldly facing Blake. Can't you see? Move aside. Blake wanted to say more but finally stepped aside. Where I couldn't see, Blake leaned against the wall, covering his face, crying silently. Part 11. I let go of Adrian and bowed sincerely. Thank you for playing along today. Adrian was wonderful. When I'd asked for this favor, he'd agreed immediately. He looked at me, silent for a moment before asking. Vi, won't you really consider me? I'm serious about you. Yes, perhaps current feelings were genuine, but who could guarantee the future? I didn't want to gamble anymore. I couldn't. Blake had been wonderful at first too, all sweet words and promises, but look how that ended. I couldn't go through that pain again. I shook my head. Thank you, but I'm better suited to being alone. I'm sure you'll find your ideal partner. Adrian was quiet, but finally didn't push, just patting my shoulder gently. Okay. If you change your mind, come find me. With that, Adrian left. Watching him walk away, I felt something indescribable. But perhaps this was the best ending. When I returned that evening, Blake was gone from my door. Mrs. Liu said he'd left. I resumed my previous life. Eating alone, sleeping alone, walking butterscotch alone. Though the two-person ensemble became one person and one dog. Me and Butterscotch. Perhaps because Adrian left, Butterscotch seemed melancholy too. He'd lie at my feet, occasionally looking up at me. I'd pet his head, comforting softly. Don't be sad, Butterscotch. You still have me. Later, I heard news about Blake. Blake was dead. I only learned a month after his death. He'd left me a substantial inheritance and one message. Vi, I wish you a lifetime of peace and happiness. Watching the lawyer read his will, tears inexplicably fell. Tears of relief. According to his lawyer, Blake had investigated Luna's wedding immediately after returning. That wedding had always been Luna's scheme to trick Blake into marriage. Because Luna was pregnant but didn't know who the father was. Luna had always played around, changing men constantly. She couldn't remember who'd fathered the child. In their circle, Blake's family background and abilities made him the best marriage prospect. But truth always surfaces. After the baby was born, he did a paternity test. The child wasn't his. Only then did Blake realize he'd been deceived. When Luna saw the truth exposed, she took half his assets and ran off with her new lover and child. He began investigating their wedding, finally learning those wedding crashers, including Luna's groom, were all actors Luna had hired. Most ridiculously, Blake had cut off my finger in front of everyone for his pride, making me the city's laughingstock. Only after Luna fled with his money did he realize he'd been played by her all along. Learning the truth, Blake went mad with rage and confronted Luna. In his fury, during their argument, he stabbed Luna multiple times. After Luna died, he killed himself, leaving me his substantial inheritance. Looking at the countless zeros in the bank account, I smiled. Blake, I'll forgive you for all this money. I hope in your next life you stay far from me. Best if you and Luna lock onto each other and stop ruining other people's lives. The end.